Hello loves, Miss Kristena back again today. We are on A Little Princess and we are on chapter 14. Chapter 14, What Melchisedec Heard and Saw. On this very afternoon, when Sarah was out, a strange thing happened in the attic. Only Melchisedec saw and heard it, and he was so alarmed and mystified that he scuttled back to his hole and hid there, and really quaked and trembled as he peeped out furtively, and with great caution to watch what was going on. The attic had been very still all the day after Sarah had left it in the early morning. The stillness had only been broken by the pattering of the rain upon the slates and in the skylight. Melchisedec had, in fact, found it rather dull, and when the rain ceased to patter and perfect silence reigned, he decided to come out and reconnoiter, though experience taught him that Sarah would not return for some time. He had been rambling and sniffing about, and had just found a totally unexpected and unexplained crumb left from his last meal, when his attention was attracted by a sound on the roof. He stopped and listened with palpitating heart. The sound suggested that something was moving on the roof. It approached the skylight. It reached the skylight. The skylight was being mysteriously opened. A dark face peeped into the attic, and then another face appeared behind it, and both looked in it with signs of caution and interest. Two men were outside on the roof and were making silent preparations to enter through the skylight itself. One was Ramdas, and the other was a young man whom the Indian gentleman's secretary, and the other young man was the Indian gentleman's secretary. But of course Melchisedec did not know this. He only knew that the young men were invading the silence and privacy of his attic. And as the one with the dark face let himself down through the aperture with such lightness and dexterity that he did not make a sound, Melchisedec turned tail and fled precipitatingly back to his hole. He was frightened to death. He had ceased to be timid with Sarah, and knew she would never throw anything but crumbs, and would never make any sound other than the soft, low, coaxing whistle. But strange men were dangerous things to remain near. He lay close and flat near the entrance of his home, just managing to peep through the crack with a bright, alarmed eye. How much he understood of the talk he heard, I'm not sure I could say in the least, but if he had understood it, he would probably have remained greatly mystified. The secretary, who was light and young, slipped through the skylight as noiselessly as Ramdas had done, and he caught a glimpse of Melchisedec's vanishing tail. "Was that a rat?" he asked Ramdas in a whisper. "Yes, a rat, Sahib," answered Ramdas, also whispering. "There are many in the walls." "Ah!" exclaimed the young man. "It's a wonder the child's not terrified of them." Ramdas made a gesture with his hands. He also smiled respectfully. He was in his place as the intimate exponent of Sarah, though she had only spoken to him once. "The child is a little friend of all things, Sahib," he answered. "She is not as other children. I see her when she does not see me. I slip across the slates and look at her many nights to see that she is safe. I watch her from my window when she does not know I am near. She stands on the table there and looks out at the sky as if it spoke to her. The sparrows come at her call. The rat she is fed and tamed in her loneliness. The poor slave of the house comes to her for comfort. There's a little child who comes to her in secret, and there's an older one who worships her and would listen to her forever if she might. This I have seen when I've crept across the roof. By the mistress of the house, who is an evil woman. She is treated like a pariah, but she has the bearings of a child who has the blood of kings." "You seem to know a great deal about her," the secretary said. "All her life, each day I know," answered Ramdas. "Her goings out I know, and her comings in, her sadness and her poor joys, her coldness and her hunger. I know when she sits alone until midnight learning her books. I know her secret friends steal in to her, and she is happier, as children can be even in the midst of poverty, because they come, and she may laugh and talk to them in whispers. If she were ill, I should know, and I would come to her and serve her as it might be done. You are sure no one comes near this place but herself, and that she will not return and surprise us. She would be frightened if she found us here, and the Sahib Carrisford's plan would be spoiled." Ramdas crossed noiselessly to the door and stood close to it. "None mount here but Sarah, Sahib," he said, "and she has gone out with her basket, and may be gone for many hours. If I stand here, I can hear any steps before it reaches the last flight of the stairs." The secretary took out a pencil and tablet from his breast pocket. "Keep your ears open," he said, and began to walk slowly and softly round the miserable little room, making rapid notes on his tablet as he looked at things. First, he went to the narrow bed. He pressed his hands upon the mattress and uttered an exclamation. "Hard as stone," he said. "That will have to be altered some day when she's out. A special journey can be made to bring it across. It cannot be done tonight." He lifted the covering and examined the one thin pillow. "Coverlet dingy and worn, blanket thin, sheets patched and ragged," he said. "What a bed for a child to sleep in, and in a house which calls itself respectable. There's not been a fire in that grate for many a day," glancing at the rusty fireplace. "Never since I have seen it," said Ramdas. "The mistress of the house is not one who remembers that another than herself may be cold." The secretary was writing quickly upon his tablet. He looked up from it as he tore off a leaf and slipped it into his breast pocket. "It's a strange way of doing things," he said. "Who planned it?" Ramdas made a modestly apologetic obeisance. "It is true that the first thought was mine, Sahib," he said, "though it was not but a fancy. I'm fond of this child, and we're both lonely. It is her way to relate her visions to her secret friends. Being sad one night, I lay close to the open skylight and listened. The vision she retold was that this miserable room might be as if it had comforts in it. She seemed to see it as she talked. She grew cheered and warmed as she spoke. Then she came to this fancy, and the next day, the Sahib being ill and wretched, I told him of the things to amuse him. It seemed then but a dream, but it pleased Sahib. To hear of the child's doings gave him entertainment. He became interested in her and asked questions. At last he began to please himself with the thought of making her visions real things." "You think that it can be done while she sleeps? Suppose she awakened," suggested the secretary, and it was evident that whatsoever the plan that was being referred to was, it had caught and pleased his fancy as well as the Sahib Carrisford's. "I can move as if my feet were velvet," Ramdas replied, "and children sleep soundly, even unhappy ones. I could have entered this room in the night many times without causing her to turn on her pillow. If the other bearer passes things to me through the window, I can do it all and she will not stir. When she awakens, she will think a magician has been here." He smiled as if his heart warmed under his white robe, and the secretary smiled back at him. "It'll be like a story from Arabian Nights," he said. "Only an Oriental could have planned it. It does not belong to London fogs." They did not remain very long, to the great relief of Melchisedec, who, as he probably did not comprehend their conversations, felt that their movements and whispers ominous. The young secretary seemed interested in everything. He wrote down things about the floor, the fireplace, the broken footstool, the old table, the wall, which last he touched with his hand again and again, seeming much pleased when he found that a number of old nails had been driven in various places. "You can hang things on them," he said. Ramdas smiled mysteriously. "Yesterday when she was out," he said, "I entered bringing with me sharp nails which can be pressed into the wall without blows from a hammer. I placed many in the platter where I may need them. They are ready." The Indian gentleman's secretary stood still and looked round as he thrust his tablets back into his pocket. "I think I have enough notes now. We can go," he said. "The Sahib Carrisford has a warm heart. It's a thousand pities that he has not found the lost child. If he should find her, his strength would be restored to him," says Ramdas. "His God may lead her to him yet." Then they slipped through the skylight, as noiselessly as they had entered, and after he was quite sure that they had gone, Melchisedec was greatly relieved, and in the course of a few minutes felt it safe to emerge from his hole again, and scuffle about in the hope that even such alarming human beings as these may have chanced to carry crumbs in their pockets and dropped one or two of them. That is the end of chapter 15. I hope to see you all again next time.